Good afternoon and welcome to That Shooting Show. My name is Steve Anderson. I am your humble host. We have another wonderful guest on the line here. We have Christian Seiler. It is Seiler, correct?
Yep, it is. You got it. You pronounced it right.
Yeah, I had so many boating puns ready to go, and we just can't use any of them. We were going to do our boat puns in Australian accents. What's it like being a sailor on the open sea? We're not going to do any of that.
Ruined it for you. Yeah, the German pronunciation got you there.
Well, congratulations on having a wonderful year of shooting. You
Thank
won
you.
every area match and nationals, correct?
Correct.
And my first question is, was that a goal that you had, or was that just something that happened because you were ready for it?
Yeah, so I basically set my sights on going to Area 6 and Area 1 and 7 in the same weekend. So I planned out 3 area matches for the year. I went down to Area 6 and shot against a couple ex-national champions and won that match, and then just kept adding matches. And eventually I shot 3 or 4 and said, why not shoot them all? So I planned out the whole rest of them, and then that was a goal about midway through the season. But it was just my goal is to win those 3 area matches. But as the season progressed, I kind of set my sights on the next thing. And then after the areas, of course, was nationals. So those are kind of sub goals, winning the area matches. The big prize was nationals, and that's what I was really working towards. But that was definitely a goal that I made about halfway through the season.
That's outstanding. How old are you, by the way?
Yeah, I'm 19.
19 years old. And when did you start shooting?
I started shooting around age 13 or 14.
And was it always open, or was it something before that?
No, I started shooting a Walther PBQ in production division, and then shot a Glock for a little while, and then worked my way up through some open guns, and now I'm shooting a Fendi open gun.
Outstanding. And you have some previous sports experience, right?
Yeah, so I played baseball in high school. That was my big sport. Traveled all across the country playing baseball. Played in high school and then my freshman year in college. So that baseball has been a big part of my life, and that's helped tremendously with just like natural athleticism, and a lot of that translates over to competitive shooting, especially the mindset, which has really helped a ton.
And what position did you play in baseball?
Yeah, so I played outfield and pitched,
Okay.
but I near the latter end of my career, I was just pitching.
Now, a lot of people believe that certain athletes or certain people are naturally gifted. Were you a naturally gifted baseball player, do you think?
Not necessarily. I think this applies to school as well. I'm have some good natural ability, but I've had to work for everything, and so that applies in school and baseball. But in baseball, I put in a lot of hours, training, technique, and so I do have ability, but a lot of it has been training, technique, and getting the right coaching and stuff has helped a ton. So it's definitely both. I definitely wasn't just born with no natural talent, but I wasn't born with an incredible amount of natural talent. A lot of it's just hard work and kind of analyzing things, and things like swings and your pitching mechanics are a lot of technique, and so I focused a lot on that.
Baseball seems like a really challenging sport visually. When you think about trying to hit a fastball, you're processing a lot of
Mhm.
information, aren't you?
Yeah, I forget what the actual statistic is, but it's like point something seconds. You have to interpret spin, where the ball is going to be, and so if you're swinging or not. So it's like a very fast decision making process that I've done probably about a million times. But I think that's helped a lot with shooting too. But I mean, it's very visually demanding, and things are happening at a high rate of speed. So definitely helped a ton.
Yeah, and baseball is what they call a conditional reflex sport, meaning you have to react. You're not really in control of the field, you're reacting to what's happening. So I would imagine that you developed pretty good reaction instincts and reaction timing, I would guess,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, I would assume. Yeah, I haven't really dug that deep into it with all like the vision and focus, what you're talking about. But yeah, a lot of it is very reactionary. Like when the ball's hit, like playing outfield, balls hit. As soon as you see the ball up, you're focusing on that and your movement and everything. So yeah, a lot of it is reacting to stuff, and I think that's probably translated into shooting because you're reacting to how the gun shoots and a lot of things like that.
Yeah, and you're making micro decisions or micro changings based on what you're
Hmm.
seeing. And I would assume that the better you can react to that stimulus,
Hmm.
the better your performance is going to
Hmm.
be. Somebody told
Yeah,
me once
absolutely.
that they thought that's why Robbie Latham was so good because of his reaction
Hmm.
time. And I said, his reaction to the timer? And what they
Yeah,
meant
no,
was his reaction to everything, you know?
yeah, the sights lifting off the gun, everything like that. So did he play sports too, or is he just
Um,
naturally gifted with that?
Basketball, I believe, was his big deal. And that's also a very rapidly moving sport.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So that's interesting. I didn't have any sports experience because my parents would let me play anything but soccer. And
Yeah.
The two things I got pretty good at, which was playing guitar and shooting a handgun, I was so terrible in the beginning, and I just don't believe that natural ability. I just don't think it's as big a deal as people think it is, and I think a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
think so.
times they use it as an excuse not to do the work. They could
Yeah.
say, "Oh, Christian Seiler, he was born with a gun in his hand or a baseball
Mhm.
glove, or maybe he was born with an
Yeah.
open gun in one hand and a baseball glove in the other,
Mhm.
and just came out ready to
Mhm.
go." I just don't think that's
Yeah.
true because you did a lot of work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. There's been a lot of work, and a lot of work has gone into that. But natural ability will only take you so far. A lot of coaches early on said that and said, I think it was around like age 13, 14 in baseball is like this is the time where natural ability kind of runs out. Because from here on out, it's technique and training and how much work you put in. So yeah, that's definitely not true. You can see like my videos when I was like 13, 14. I was walking around the stages and shooting mics all over the place and spraying targets. So it's definitely been a lot of hard work, and I think the biggest thing for people to know is that no matter how much natural ability you have, you can train technique and get a lot better, and that's what's going to separate the winners in second place.
Outstanding. How long did it take you to make GM?
I could not make GM on classifiers to save my life, so
Really?
I had yeah, so I had to get a match bump for winning Area 3. But I think the big thing with that was just I could never really stand and shoot in a box, and so until I really focused on training fundamentals and less movement stuff, I've been able to GM all the classifiers I've been shooting lately. But yeah, so I think I was 17 when I made GM by winning Area 3.
Now, that's interesting because many of the questions that we have for you are about movement and
Yeah,
practicing while moving and doing that because the classifier system doesn't really represent the sport. You know, you
yeah, I would agree.
you take what's maybe 10%, 15% of what the sport requires, maybe 20%
Yeah.
because it does require
Mhm.
reloads and things of that nature. But to base everything on those skills seems a little out of whack, and I think it's fascinating that you got yours on a match bump and not classifiers.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, USPSA kind of has their hands tied because I don't have a great system to do classification, but you are correct. It is very few skills and shooting in a box, and so there's so much more to the game. And I try to fix it with like some movement classifiers, but I think they really stress standing and shooting in a box, and so there can be a lot of paper GMs that can shoot these long targets or really be really precise, but isn't up to par with movement speed. So yeah, I decided to do it the hard way and win the area match, but. Um, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that.
That's fascinating. How has your practice schedule changed over the years, or the way you practice and the amount you practice? How's that
Yeah.
changed?
Yeah. So basically, I kind of think of it as like two shooting seasons. So during the school year, I'll probably start with the summer. So during the summer, I usually work different internships, work downtown Seattle. And so when I get off of work, I can go shoot at the range maybe 3 or 4 times a week, go shoot a couple hundred rounds. And so summer season is when I make pretty good gains shooting wise because I can get really consistent practice. I can get outside, I can shoot. And really make some good improvements there. And that's also during match season, so that's actually perfect timing. So I can shoot, train, go to matches. Like nationals this year is perfect because it's during the summer, and my school didn't start till late September. I actually went to school the next day. My first day of school was the day after nationals. But during summer, I can go train and practice during the week. Do get outside, and then during school year, over the past few years, I've been in college. I'm a sophomore at the University of Washington, so I can't keep any firearms on campus out there. I live on campus, so basically, I Monday to Friday I'm a student, and then I go home on the weekend and I'll dry fire a ton and then go shoot. So I kind of have two seasons there. So I go shoot inside during the winter and fall.
I'm so glad you said dry fire because you made me
Mhm.
nervous. I thought you were going to say that you never dry fired.
No, 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 no. That's pretty important. And yeah, a lot of people think that dry fire is more so just for like draws and reloads and things like that. And I've actually thought that for a really long time. But it's been pretty important for diagnosing the way that you pull a trigger and can get some good repetitions that way. So I'll come home, I'll go dry fire about probably 30 minutes to an hour. That's pretty long for dry fire, but keep in mind I've been gun deprived for about 5 days
Right.
at that point. So I go home, dry fire, and then I'll go shoot. And I like to dry fire before I shoot. I dry fire in the mornings before I shoot matches, the night before, and so it's pretty good to do.
And what a great time saver because you get to the range, you're already warmed up.
Yep,
Most
totally.
most people don't have immediate range access. They're either far from the range or their range has
Oh yeah.
restrictions or no equipment. And I've always been a huge fan of doing that at the range that you can only do at the range because there's so
Right.
much you can do in dry fire.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of gains that can be made, and then when you get to the range, you're totally ready to go, and you're kind of familiar with the handgun. So a lot of people get to the range and like, oh my gosh, what's it like to hold a gun? Because they haven't things like that. So I like to get that out of the way and help pick up the dot a lot. So it's a good time.
Yeah, anytime somebody struggles with finding the dot, I always look at them and say, "You don't dry fire very much, do you?" And they always say, "Nope."
Exactly right. Yeah, pretty easy to diagnose.
Now,
Yeah.
is your dry fire pretty structured? You do the same thing
Uh,
all the time?
I like have like the same like general outline, but a lot of it's by feel, and so I like to start off going pretty slow because if I haven't dry fired in a week or so, when I start dry firing, I'm gonna try to like slam reloads really fast. I'll like my technique will kind of falter a little bit. It won't be perfect. I used to be one of those guys who used to suffer from like shaking the gun a million times, like tilting it and doing all this weird stuff. So I just like to start off slow and just make sure I have the fundamentals down and kind of speed up a little bit. I didn't always used to be like that, but I kind of found out in my dry fire that I can my technique cannot be on par or isn't on par when I try to like just go hard out of the gate. And so I like to start slow, like to do draws, reloads, pick up the dot, do some table starts, really get pretty zen with the trigger. I think that's the biggest thing in dry fire is knowing your trigger, so you can manipulate that trigger at a high rate of speed at long and short targets. So and that's the biggest thing for me lately with dry fire has been trigger control.
Interesting. And
Mm-hmm.
this whole conversation got started when I sent you a message on
Mm-hmm.
Facebook Messenger. You on another podcast, and we're going to go into this in
Mm-hmm.
detail here in just a little bit. But I wanted to mention this, but before I forget, you were on somebody else's podcast, and you talked about watching the dot
Mm-hmm.
more than anybody else.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I remember that conversation actually, and that's coming back to me. But yeah, I think my game plan might be a little bit different than other people. I don't think this is a big secret. I think all the top guys kind of know how I approach the match. They see how I do it really, but I like to stay consistent with everything that I do. I like when I'm shooting the stages. I like to run the math of thinking like, what's the Charlie worth? How much time can I save doing this? But most of the times I'll lean on accuracy because it's the most consistent way to just stay kind of flatlining the entire match. And so a lot of people go up and down, but I really try to stay pretty consistent and pretty controlled the entire match. A lot of people shoot aggressively. A lot of people like to have highs and lows and really like to gain a ton on some and then lose a ton on some, I guess. But I like to stay consistent. And so I think I focus on the dot a lot more than other people. And I think that kind of sometimes hinders me on closer to medium range targets. But I think control has helped me a ton at nationals. I have to pull up my practice score results from nationals, but I don't think I dropped out of the top 10. I think I only dropped out of the top 10 on a stage maybe like 3 times or something like that. I had one big mistake, but that wasn't because I was trying to push to do anything. It was just a stupid error. But besides that, I stayed pretty consistent. I think I only shot a couple deltas. I had one miss, where everyone else is throwing 3 or 4 misses. They're really trying to push, and so I save that time to push and practice and train, and that's kind of where I want to push. And then when I get to the match, I like to stay controlled, see the dot, have a pretty hard dot focus most of the time. Unless I'm getting really close, I'll focus more on the targets. But I really like to focus on the dot. I really stay consistent, and I kind of feel like I get out of control when I'm not focusing more on the dot. So I think you can shoot at a really high rate of speed with focusing on a dot, like primarily. But I really just like to stay consistent. And that's been my kind of motto all season long, to be able to shoot 8 area matches without having one big mistake. And nationals, it's 3 days of shooting. So that's kind of been my philosophy on it. But some people have other philosophies, but this is what's been working. And going into the next season, I am going to try to add to my toolkit, being able to scale up and shoot faster and push when needed. I've had to do it a couple times this season, but I just like to keep that kind of like scaling up speed in my toolkit. Like at Area 8, I was down probably 10 to 15 points in the last stage. I was able to scale it up and push and go. And so sometimes the wheels can fall off, sometimes they don't, and I don't want to have that unless I really have to do it. So that's kind of my philosophy on things.
So when you talk about scaling up,
Yeah.
how does what you see
Mhm.
change?
Yeah, so I think it's like the focus on the dot, and so is you like a soft, medium, or hard focus? And so on most stages, I'll have like a medium to hard focus. But then like on Area 8, there's this little tiny course of fire. I was down points to JJ, and I had to win that stage by a considerable margin. And so I call them almost like more like fringy sight pictures or like soft focus sight pictures.
Sure.
And so Yeah, you know you're really on when you're getting away with like you're shooting, you're not hardlining down, boom, boom, and you're really leaving fast after you call your second shot. That's kind of when you know you're really on. Kind of a side note, I guess, but yeah, those stages, if I can get away with a soft focus on those targets and get out of there a little quicker, or shoot faster, that's totally fine with me. But it's just a soft focus on the dot when I'm really trying to scale up, and so I'm less focused on like the dot there, and I'm more focused on my surroundings and the targets. And so sometimes it get pretty sketchy. I'm not gonna lie. Like at area 8, getting out of those little positions, pretty sketchy. But the hits are there, and that's when you know you're pretty comfortable and confident with your shooting, where you can have a pretty soft focus and your hits will still be there. I think I had all alpha and like 3 seconds faster than the other time, so I gained like 20 points on it. So I was able to pull out the win, which I ended up needing.
So I think about
Yeah.
that as seeing the dot more like a paintbrush instead of a scalpel.
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
that's a good analogy.
meaning instead of lift, return, stop, it just kind of does
Mhm.
this paintbrush thing. And as
Yeah.
long as the paintbrush stays in the sweet spot, you can call those
Yep.
shots almost as well, if not as well, as the other ones,
Yeah,
right?
I totally agree. And also with the dot, when it's kind of going like a paintbrush, you still can see like a hard outline of the dot.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on kind of what dot you're using, so you still kind of see a hard outline on the dot, so you know where it is. So if you're pretty comfortable with prepping the trigger when your gun's coming down, and you're pretty good on like calling your shots, then you can definitely do that at a high rate of speed. It just gets a little dicey. I don't like to do it if I don't have to, because you can still shoot at a high rate of speed with seeing the dot with a hard focus.
So I have a lot of clients who are over 50,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of them are shooting carry optics because their
Yep.
eyesight and they don't want to buy open guns and all the rest of it.
Hmm.
What
Yep.
advice would you give somebody who's having a hard time shooting a dot quickly?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is picking up the dot. I think in the first year, that was a big issue for me. So I think dry fire is really important with that. I think the more times you can do different drills to pick up the dot, that's good. Like table starts, things like that. More strong hand weekend to pick up the dot, and then just realize that different targets deserve different respect, a different trigger pull, and a different side picture. And so just understanding that and trying to apply that would be best. And so I like to do like a lot of target scaling drills where you have like far targets and then close targets. I think that's like one of the number one drills that I run, and that's one of the things I like to teach is that target scaling and the different sight picture required and the different trigger pull required. So I think a lot of drills like that would help, and just picking up the dot and understanding the focus change would be most important for people like that.
Yeah, I think the issue is, and some of these guys dry fire a bunch. I think that there's two things that they're doing. Number
Mm-hmm.
one, they're wanting a perfect shot, which means
Mm-hmm.
number two, they're wanting
Yeah,
the dot to stop and be still. And it's not going to stop or be still.
it's never gonna. Yeah, I totally agree. And so the dot's never going to stop and be still. And then they'll probably struggle shooting on the move because when you're shooting on the move, the dot's going to be moving all over the place. And so, of course, you want to get lower to the ground. And a lot of people don't do that. I'm pretty shocked at how high people stand a lot of the
I
time. So
know.
that's why their dots. Yeah, it's crazy. I think every single person in the class last weekend, I kept reminding, get low. But they all worked on it and got a lot better. But yeah, so when the dot's moving all over the place, moving and shooting, you can't have a perfect dot. And so the big thing with that is prepping while you're moving, and then when the dot's on the center of the target, breaking the shot. But yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest issues is wanting a perfect sight picture.
The other thing they do that drives me nuts is they want to shoot pairs when they're shooting while moving. So they're wanting to double tap. And
Mhm.
once you get past
Yeah,
9 yards, you may have a foot down or something of that nature that's going to throw that sucker very high or very wide because they've already committed to pulling the trigger, regardless of what they see, right?
yeah, absolutely. A lot of people try to double tap, and so that's one of the big things with like cadence. A lot of people try to save time in their transition or in their splits. And as I look at them, I'm like, are you kidding me? You're going to shoot worse points and save less time. You got to save that time in the transitions. So, I mean, just with shooting on the move, they try to split super fast, but
Mm-hmm.
you got to see what you need to see on every single target. You have to see what you need to see, and so double tapping on like a target at like 20 yards, bam, 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 is not going to help. And so,
I
like a
know.
more smooth cadence is way better. You save the time in the transitions, not in the splits. So that's one of the big things that I preach. And as much as I can preach it and make videos about it and everything, people, I think the biggest change for a lot of people when I actually see them making the difference is when you're right next to them and you can feel the difference by showing them, all right, do that one more time. You're do it like this. So that was pretty cool. Last weekend, I taught one of my first classes. I mean, I taught like the MGM junior camp and some private lessons, but I taught the Infinity experience last week, and that was one of the big things I focused on. It was pretty cool to see those changes.
So, and that's so gratifying when you're standing there and they're getting it wrong, they're doing it the way they've always done it, and you're like, "Would you please, for the love of Pete, just try it one time this other way?"
Yeah,
And then when they look at you and they go, "Holy crap, that worked," and you're just nodding, going, "I've been trying to tell you for 30 minutes. Just please do the thing,"
yeah.
you know.
It was
One,
pretty awesome because this weekend there was multiple people that had various issues with like prepping the trigger, and it was like probably the most rewarding thing of the entire weekend. Just seeing like near the end of the day, a couple stages just really hooked up and everything connected. So that was pretty cool to see. But especially with the transition thing, I actually just brought someone up to do a demo and said, "All right, show me how you shoot this." And there's a whole line of targets, and there's ba 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 ba. I was like, all right, what's the time? So then I did it, and I was like 4 seconds, and then I'm like, all right, now I'm gonna do it the right way and like cut my time in half basically,
mm-hmm.
and got better hits. So
So
yeah,
much
so
fun.
that's pretty cool.
One thing I've
Yeah,
started
absolutely.
doing, there's this particular part of our class where we're talking about leaving sooner and shooting sooner. And we have a little cardboard target that we
Mm-hmm.
write the times down as they try different things. We watch their times drop. And I have them write the
Mm-hmm.
word lower and then put hash marks next
Mm-hmm.
to it. Every time I say the
Yeah.
word lower, lower, they put a hash mark. One class,
Yeah,
there
yeah,
was 37 hash marks where I said the word lower in 90
yeah.
minutes. 37
Of
times.
getting their weight lower and more of their legs, correct?
Yeah. Widen
Yeah.
that stance out. All right. Let's talk about gear a little bit. I find gear incredibly boring, but
Mhm.
my listeners don't. So this is the part they're
Yeah,
getting. They're
yeah,
like, "Oh, we don't care about practice. Talk about some magical gear, right?" So you're
yeah, yeah,
shooting
yeah.
Infinity firearms, which are gorgeous.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, they're very gorgeous. And I actually had the opportunity of going down and staying at the factory last weekend, and I was like absolutely blown away with a couple of things. One, the quality of the product. Um, Other like gun builders just basically take frames and slides and they fit them and put them together. And it's pretty cool that Infinity Firearms is literally starting with steel and putting it through machines and making slides and everything. And so they have a lot of control over the quality of their parts and the material of their parts. So they're using superior material and superior processes to treat the material and get it ready. And so it's pretty cool to see because there's so many dedicated people down there, and every single person comes to work ready to go and just starts really grinding on things. So I really respect people that work hard and want good outcomes and put out good products, and that's a result of hard work and dedication. So it was an absolutely amazing experience to see them and how they worked down there and how they all worked as a team and really put out a premier product. And they do things a lot differently than some of the quality that I've seen in the past. And so amazing to see the whole process and see how the gun in my hand started and all the processes and quality control aspects of Infinity. So it's been an amazing experience. I think the real thing that sets them apart is the people there. So I absolutely love shooting my Infinity gun, and I will never shoot any other gun, any other open gun besides an Infinity Firearms gun because I've seen the difference and I know what makes the gun like a $9,000 open gun, and the difference is huge with the longevity and the performance of the firearm. So it's been a pretty eye-opening weekend to say the least. Last weekend.
And how many open guns do you keep in rotation for personal use? Do you have like a match gun,
Mm-hmm.
practice gun, a
Mm-hmm.
backup? How does that work for you?
Yeah. So right now I have two. I'm working on getting a third one because the perfect kind of schedule with your guns is you have one practice gun that you consistently beat up, and then you have two match guns. You have a primary match gun, which you feel like as much as people try to like get the same exact gun, and literally like both my Infinities weigh the exact same, feel the exact same. I can't tell a difference at all, but I guess most people find some difference between guns. But these guns are pretty much matched, and so you want to have a practice gun that you beat up. And I have two top ends for one that I can beat up and go practice with, and then I also want to have two match guns, a primary match gun and then a backup match gun. So that's pretty much the ideal setup: is you have two match guns and you have a practice gun, or one or two practice guns when it gets hot. So that's pretty ideal because you don't want to if your gun works great and you love the way it feels, you don't want to put a bunch of rounds on it. And you want to keep it feeling the same and shooting the same. So you leave that in the safe until about a week before the match, and then you start practicing with it, and then you shoot in the match.
I see. And I'm guessing you're super comp as opposed to 9 major.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
As opposed to 9 grenade.
That's a new one. I haven't heard that one. I have
Yeah, that's all on
a
Facebook.
I have a very good friend named Andrew Hyder who also shoots an Infinity. I'm sure you know him pretty well.
Oh yeah, Yeah, Andrew's an awesome guy. I shot nationals in a lot of area matches with him, and really happy to call him part of the Infinity family. I love shooting with him.
Yeah, he told me that Infinity would not make him a 9 major gun. They were like, dude, you can have anything you want, but you can't have a 9 major.
Yeah, I don't really know a lot of the science about it, about why, but 38 Super Comp just feeds really well, is really soft. I like the way it feels, and so I think it's probably a little easier on the guns too. But I'm not the technician; I'm the guy pulling the trigger. But I'm sure some people at Infinity could tell you about why they do the difference in calibers and stuff. But I've been really happy with 38 Super Comp. My guns run 100%, so pretty happy with 38 Super Comp.
Yep, and that's really all that matters is that they run.
Absolutely.
What kind of
Yeah.
recoil spring do you like? Lighter or
Um,
heavier?
It depends. So I run a variable recoil spring, and I think the concept behind that is you have tighter coils at the front. So when the gun the slide's going back, it has like a pretty good pressure against or resisting force against the slide coming backwards. And then the looser coils don't just slap the slide going forward, so it's like you don't have dip and things like that. So I run the all in Infinity parts. They make what's pretty cool is they make it almost I think almost at like 99.99%, maybe not like the screws on the gas pedal or something like that, but they make every single part on that gun, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I use Infinity springs, and I run a 7 pound spring, a 7 pound variable in my open gun. So I like the
Awesome.
way it feels. And everyone likes to say they feel differences and stuff, but I like to go with reliability as number one. So
Absolutely. What about trigger weight?
mhm,
You like a super light trigger or
mhm. Not really.
middle of the road?
I actually, yeah, I handed my gun to a couple guys in a super squad, and they thought my trigger was like unshootable, basically, which is kind of funny. But I think mine's at like 1.75 pounds. I like to have more pre-travel than most. I think that's what they're
Yep.
complaining about. A lot of people just like to be able to breathe on the trigger and have it go off. But if I'm shooting strong hand or weekend, I like to have a little bit of pre-travel to pull out before I get to the wall. And I think I can shoot more accurately with pre-travel and being like very conscious about like where I'm at in the trigger. And so I like to have more control over it than most. But the concept with shooting accurately is I get a good sight picture, and then what I do between getting good sight picture and the gun going off, aka pulling the trigger, is pretty important. So people like to go lighter than heavier, and I totally understand that. But I feel more comfortable with the trigger weight that I have and the pre-travel and over-travel that got set up.
Yeah, I agree completely. I took a class from Chris Tilley when you were probably still in diapers, very very long time ago, and
Yeah,
I gave him my open gun. I had a used Caspian open gun I bought for $1,000, and he tried the
gotcha.
trigger and he made a face like somebody had farted in an elevator. He was like, "What is this?" It was like
Yeah.
2.5 pounds of crunch and grit, but I knew that thing so well, and
Oh
I
yeah.
just felt like it didn't matter that much, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's actually funny you say it was Chris, because Chris is the one that wanted to field my gun after the match, and he felt my trigger. And he's like, "Man, that is unshootable."
He
I'm
made the
like, "Oh,
same face. Yeah, did he make a face like
yeah,
somebody farted right next to him?
yeah."
Oh.
Pretty much the same exact thing. But people don't realize it's really not. Really doesn't all come down to the gear. It's like how well you know it. So if you know that trigger pretty well, that's gonna make you pretty successful. So I think the biggest thing to get to know your gear better comes down to how well you know the trigger and when you know it's gonna break. Like when you're thinking about like shooting weekend, what's the hardest shot? Your first shot. It's because you don't know where the gun's gonna go off, where the pre-travel is gonna end, and when the wall's gonna start. And so knowing the trigger really well is really important. So I like that.
Well, and most people don't practice weekend ever anyway, so they're mentally not prepared. They're scared. They're nervous, and and they have literally no idea what they're doing, and they just throw the thing out there and like,
Yeah,
oh dear God, oh what's gonna
yeah.
happen? A little bit of
I hope I hit.
practice. What's
Yeah,
that?
a little bit of practice. Yeah, they're like, oh, I hope I hit paper, basically.
I
But
know.
yeah, it's ridiculous. But I like to do end every single practice session with strong hand weekend. It's made a huge difference. And honestly, I'm not at the place where I want to be with my strong hand weekend. I am there with my strong hand, but my weekend still has some more ground to gain. So that's one of the big things I've been practicing and training. But I think you gain a lot of confidence and a lot of good energy when you go to the range and you just shoot weekend or something like that. I think range sessions like that are very empowering. So, but or just doing it every single practice session. But that's one of the biggest things is just knowing your trigger.
Yeah, I had the first time I got shooter's elbow real bad. All my
Hmm.
buddies wanted to go to the range, and I didn't know if I'd ever shoot again. It was so bad because I didn't know anything
Yeah.
about it at that time, and I was shooting the
Hmm.
plate rack at 25 yards, weak hand only,
Weekend.
and they
Hmm.
looked at me like I was from Mars. I was like, well, there's nothing else I can do, so I might as well do this, you
Yeah.
know. And that was
Yeah.
very very gratifying to actually be able to do that. What kind of optic do you use, and what size dot?
Yeah, so I like to go with a smaller dot to be more precise. Like you'll especially see it when you're shooting like 50 yards. You really want a smaller dot. So I run a Loophole Dust Point Pro and run the 2.5 MOA configuration. I really like to go smaller. I like to have a kind of a shorter zero. I like to have like I like to say like 15 yards, but I usually just do it a little bit closer just because when you think about it, 99% of the things that you're shooting are going to be pretty close. And so I don't want to have any scope offset. And I want to be able to be really precise when I'm close. And then when I'm far, I can just make that adjustment pretty easily and just aim a little lower on the target. So that's not that big of a deal, but trying to think about it on every single short course is kind of a pain.
Well, and if you've got a lot of parcels to worry about that are kind of up
Mm-hmm.
close, that scope offset can
Mm-hmm.
bite you pretty bad.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I remember
Yeah.
that happened to me one year with our mutual friend Andrew Hyder. They gave us at one
Mhm.
nationals, they gave us half of the upper A zone at 8 yards,
Yeah.
and he comes off the stage and he goes, "Watch the no shoot." And I
Yeah.
said, "Watch the no shoot." And I put that dot right in the middle of that of that no shoot and put it right in the
Yeah.
forehead. And on that particular target, you had to put your dot above the actual target, which makes me very uncomfortable.
Uh,
You know.
yeah, it makes me very uncomfortable too because it's very counterintuitive and your gun's going to recoil up and it's a weird feeling for sure. But sometimes you got to do it.
I know that was a bummer. What about ammo? What do you like for powder and bullets?
Yeah, so I run Vitavari 3 and 3.8. I run about 9 to 10 grains of that. I use Starline Brass 3.8 Super Comp. That's been the most reliable. I've tried a couple different brass, Jagman, and Arms Core, but the way that it works with the extractor and the reliability of the circumference of the brass has worked out pretty good with the Starline Brass. And then I run an Everglades 124 jacketed hollow point and pretty good combination between the Infinity Firearms open gun and the Everglades. You can just stack bullets on top of each other. So
Nice.
that's been pretty cool.
Did
Yeah.
you did you ever try anything lighter than a 124?
I have not, but I've always run a 124, no matter what open gun I've been shooting, and I think I've been shooting 124 since I started. But yeah, it just kind of works, and I don't really try to change anything. And I rather a lot of people are chasing the next coolest load or softer by a margin, but just it works reliably and it's been working well. So I just like to train with it and call it good.
Yeah, one thing I noticed is that the more people love to,
Mhm.
we'll use air quotes here, they love to work the comp.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
when I first got my open gun, it had this, I don't remember what kind of powder it was, but it was super, super slow. And the dot just kind of wiggled back and forth, made it
Hmm.
very difficult to actually call a shot. When that dot lifts a little bit more, I think it can make
Hmm.
the shots a little bit easier to call, right?
Yeah, when the dots moving all over the place, it's really hard to calm. I've actually experienced this weird phenomenon with Vitavari 3 and 3.8 without other powders. I feel like when I shoot Vitavari, the dot sometimes you can go up and to the right. Always grip issue. But actually this weekend I was like shooting 3 and 3.8, 3 and 3.7, and then N105, which is something I never do. I never try to mess with stuff, but I had the opportunity to try it, and it's funny to see how some powders go up and then wiggle,
Mm-hmm.
some go up right, and so I'm gonna look more into that because a lot of people ask me, "Hey, my gun's going up and to the right. What's going on?" And I've always told them, "All right, pick up your gas pedal," and then usually it fixes it, and then I tell them put it back on and then fix your grip and kind of talk to them about that. But a weird phenomenon I saw this weekend with powder, so I might look into it more actually now.
That's interesting. And while we're on that subject, let's talk about grip a little bit. What do you think is
Yeah,
important for grip?
yeah, I think consistency is really important, and so that's kind of why I put the gas pedal on there. But the same kind of concepts apply. Get as high as you can with your right hand. Don't over grip with your right hand, so you can pull the trigger at a high rate of speed. That's actually something I've seen a lot lately with kind of some local shooters. They're getting a lot of trigger freeze and can't really split that fast. I'm like, come on, I've seen you split like tens before. Like, why can't you do that in the match? It's just because they tense up too much with the right hand. So
Mm-hmm.
that's something that's easily correctable that I've seen a couple people doing lately. Left hand, try to like kind of turn in a little bit, cant your hand forward a little bit. Sometimes harder to do with the gas pedal, but more applicable with your limited or production guns. But I think all the fundamentals are you kind of want to play like the grip and the stance you play to your strengths, and there's a preset formula to do it. But I think probably the most important thing that people should focus on is their trigger control, because I can shoot 50-yard shots on one leg, so stance isn't as important. I think trigger control is the big thing. So that's one of the things that I focused on the past year.
Interesting.
Mhm.
Do you have a normal or routine stage breakdown process?
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking about this. One of the cool thing about the Infinity experience this weekend was I was able to teach different movement concepts and shooting concepts and actually show them on the stage. how I apply those concepts plus how I approach a stage. So I've been burned a lot with my stage planning, and I do feel like that's been one of my biggest weaknesses is not only stage planning, but the way that I break down the stages. So I've kind of changed in the past 2 years, and I think that's when I've been the most successful. So like at 2018 nationals, I wasn't running the same like process that I now run today, and it's kind of bitten me a little bit in the way that like at 2018 nationals, I missed out on second place by forgetting a target on the last day. And so I think that's one of the biggest things is knowing where your targets are and not forgetting them. That's like number one, like ground basis thing. So when I go approach the stage, I think it's really important to listen to the RO. I mean, a lot of people try to like just go hop on the stage, but the biggest thing is like knowing how many targets there are, what the start procedures are. And so a lot of people, everyone's like getting to the line and they're asking, oh, what's the start position? I'm like, that's like things you should know. So
Yeah.
like the day before I'll look at the match booklet. I'll find which stages I need to spend more time walking, which stages I need to go see the activators. So that's kind of like your homework before the match is knowing the start positions, knowing how many targets there are. So I go to the stage. If I'm shooting PM, I'll go there in the AM. I'll watch the movers, watch things like that. And then when I actually get on the stage, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to probably walk around the backside of the stage and know where all the targets are. And then so I know and see that where the targets are. So nothing's hiding, nothing's going to surprise me. I'm actually going to count those targets. Then when I get on the stage, if there's different windows and positions, I think to myself and look around. I say, what can I see from what position? And then how can I blend these positions? So the biggest thing is not forgetting them, obviously. So when I go in there, I see, okay, what can I see from what position? And then I pick where I'm shooting the targets from. And then I choreograph my run on how I'm blending the positions. And so the groundwork for success is knowing your stage plan in and out and choreographing your footwork and movement. And then, so once you have that all dialed in, then the next level of detail, I like to break it down to like levels of detail. The first level of detail is like knowing where your targets are. The next one is like knowing where you're shooting them from. Then next is where your feet are going. And then the final refining ones is knowing where you're going to aim. And that's one of the big things that people forget is you'll have like a hard cover target or you'll have a no shoot and you'll decide where you're shooting. Am I going to accept Charlies? Am I going to shoot alphas? Am I going to shoot into the no shoot, like getting closer to it? And so one of the big things when I run through the stages is I pick where I'm going to aim. And then the next level of detail that I've never heard anyone talk about is how you're going to pull the trigger. And so that's one of the big things I was showing these guys on Sunday was when I'm walking through the stages, I'm planning where I'm aiming and how I'm pulling the trigger. So if you get to that level of detail, things like forgetting targets and knowing where your feet are just a complete afterthought. So that's how you make it pretty subconscious. And people like to run through the stage hundreds and hundreds of times, but powering just run through it 3 or 4 times with a huge level of detail, and then you kind of run through it.
What about, I see people, they like to run the stages at full speed or what they think full speed is going to be. And I don't frequently see a great result from that because I think there's not a whole lot of detail there. And I
Yeah.
think they're pre-programming how fast they're going to do things based on reacting to what they see. You
Yeah,
know?
absolutely. I totally agree. And so a lot of people like to base their philosophies off of the most winning person in history, and that's Eric Raffel. And so he never runs through the stages, and so I've kind of just been doing that from default, running through stages. But over time, I've kind of like gotten the reasoning behind what I'm doing. And so with that is you get a pre-programmed cadence or rhythm in your brain, and so that's like why on Steel Challenge, why I don't suggest like people saying, all right, I'm gonna go ping, 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 because when you get on that stage and you're actually shooting and you don't see that sight picture, you're going to pull the trigger regardless. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's the big thing when you run through the stage and you're like, all right, I'm going to go bam, 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 bam. And you get there and your sights can only shoot accurate shots at bam, bam. You don't want to have that preset cadence and then just crack off a shot into the no shoot or crack off a miss. So that's why running through the stages and having a preset cadence is stupid.
Not recommended.
Not
Stupid.
recommended.
Same
Not
thing.
advised.
Now it's interesting to me that you program in how you're going to pull the trigger. For me, that always took care of itself. And
Yeah.
now, granted,
Yeah.
I never got to your level. And maybe that's something that separates me as or I was a super squatter at that time, but I never broke into the top 10. You know, Is that a universal thing that they talk about in the top 10 is consciously deciding how to pull the trigger?
I don't think so, but I think it's been pretty successful for me just because I've had the issue in the past with prepping the trigger, and I think
Ooh.
that's a pretty common thing with most people. And so, like, I literally discovered prepping the trigger in the practice bay at 2018 Nationals before I shot. One of my first stages was strong hand weekend, so I was practicing strong hand weekend, and I was just missing these huge USPSA steel targets. And I walked back like all defeated, like, okay, I'm pretty screwed. And then one of my good friends, DJ Norris, came over to me. He's like, you ever heard of prepping the trigger? I'm like, I think I've heard people talk about it, but what does it actually mean? And so I experienced that with a lot of people. People didn't understand what actually prepping the trigger is. And so I think starting out, I always do it during my walkthrough, but I don't think on all my stages I'm actually thinking about that while I'm shooting. And it does take care of itself, and that's to be at a good level. It should take care of it itself. But I always do it in my walkthrough, no matter what level I'm at. I've always done it through my walkthrough, and then it should just be programmed in. So I mean, at some points I'll get to a 25-yard play rack, and I'll like consciously be thinking, all right, prep the trigger, like be very precise about it. But
Sure.
I do agree that it does take care of itself. But I think it is good to do it during your walkthrough, and then that's what makes it subconscious on the stage.
Yeah.
By doing it through your walkthrough. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
always shot a ton of
Mhm.
groups, and so
Yeah. Oh yeah.
every time we get to group shooting in class, there's always the skeptic that says, "How does this relate to USPSA?" Because we're standing there slow firing these groups, and that's not what they
Mhm.
want to do. They want to go fast, go
Yeah.
fast, go fast. And I never had a great answer for them. And then I remembered this one stage I shot where I had three really close targets followed by a 25-yard mini popper. And I
Mhm.
remember slap, 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 slap. And as I brought the gun up, I felt the trigger reset, which normally we don't feel that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
something in my brain said, "Hang on there, ding dong. Let's work this
Mhm.
trigger a little bit more gently." And I think that comes from
Yeah.
group shooting. I think that's where that can become subconscious.
Yeah. I definitely think so. I think that's usually one of the first things I do when I get to the range is just really get like very precise in my trigger, and I'll shoot groups all the time. I think that's really important, and I think a way to apply that to USPSA is think about the positioning. Like on an IPSC stage, not all of it's gonna be shooting on the move. Usually it's gonna be like 3 or 4 positions. You post up and you shoot. So knowing how to shoot very accurately is really important.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, next question. Let's see. Do you ever calculate a hit factor? Do you ever try to calculate a hit factor, or do you make
Mhm.
decisions based on somebody else's hit factor?
Yeah, I really am not big into USPSA math. I think it can be pretty important at some times, but I think a lot of people get paralyzed by that and really get into like, oh, I have to shoot this many Charlies or this many Alphas. But I do like to look at a perfect squad if you're not first. I love to look at their hit factor and then think about, all right, how much is a Charlie, how much is an Alpha, and where can I save? And so a lot of the times I'll be like, all right, so these close targets here, I'm gonna get my Alphas on, and then the far targets I can like aim away from the no shoot and like minimize my risk. And so I don't try to calculate my hit factor because one, I'm not very good at it, and two, I think it's not very accurate. So I like to look at other people's hit factors before and then kind of do some math and think about what I can change or think about differently. But I think most of the time, just playing to your strengths and not focusing on others is pretty important. A lot of people try to like chase something or chase a time or chase someone, but it all comes down to what you're doing at the end of the day.
Well, anytime I meet a hit factor mathematician, they'll look at the stage and go, "Oh, this is a 7." And I look at
Yeah,
them and go, "Okay, it's a 7. That's great." Does that
yeah,
mean you're going to pull the trigger any slower or faster than you can see what you need to see? Well, no.
no,
So what are you going to do
exactly.
different now that you know it's a 7? And I totally agree with what you said. It can help you make decisions, right? By
Yeah,
knowing what this is worth or knowing what that's worth. I think that's where that becomes a little bit more helpful.
yes, that's the only time I see it helpful. It's just planning on, all right, well, I'm not going to shoot into this no shoot. I'm not going to shoot close to this. I'm going to take some Charlies on that or a fringe sight picture here or there. So I think that's been really important. I totally agree with that philosophy.
Outstanding. All right, let's talk about shooting while moving versus
Mhm.
standing and stopping.
Yeah, totally. So I think I do it maybe a little differently at times, but the same concepts apply. And I feel like 80% of shooters don't get low as much as I need to. And now you were talking about how you put tally marks of like
Yeah.
get low, like how many times. I think that's big. I mean, so many people they'll go into a position, stand up, or
Mm-hmm.
they'll start moving and they'll be like pretty much straight up and down.
Mm-hmm.
And so your legs act as shock absorbers. And so as much as I can preach that, you got to be on the range. I got to show you this is how low it's going to be, and now feel the difference, because the difference is pretty extreme. But one of the things that I started doing last year was kind of doing like a hesitation step. At nationals this year, there's one stage where you shoot on the left and right. It was a classifier, and then there's one target in the middle you have to come back for. And so I've kind of like choreographed this new like hesitation type step, where you're not stopping, but you're not like just running through it. And so I like that little hesitation type step, and it's helped me a ton, like blend some positions and things like that.
I call that a pause, right?
Yeah,
It's
a
it's
pause.
it's
Yeah,
a
pause
pause
perfect.
instead of a stop. You said earlier that you feel like you could make a 50-yard shot on one leg. And I
Yeah,
and I love to hear that, because people can
mhm,
do a lot more with less perfect stance than they think they can.
definitely.
You know, they start out training, okay, I got my perfect stance, and even that's not normally very good, but they're going to use
Right.
that every single time. Then I ask them to pick up a foot, and they literally can't do it.
Yeah, pretty crazy.
I know their brains will not let them fire a handgun without both feet on the dang ground. It just
Yeah.
drives me insane. Now, did you adopt this preference for shooting while moving? Did you sort of come into it that way, or did you have some eye-opening moment where you're like, "Holy crap, I got to keep moving"? How did you make that discovery?
Yeah, so that's been kind of more natural for me shooting on the move, but just like looking at the stages and where I can save time. When I was younger, I used to take like my videos and like put them over other videos, and like I'd see where the time saving was. And so one of the guys I shot with early on, and who someone I considered a coach, his name's Andrew Hong, and he's a local guy to me. And I would always put his videos over mine, and what he did a lot would shoot on the move, even like far shots. And so that's kind of where I learned like the hesitation type thing, and shooting on the move. It just saves a lot of time, and I think you can shoot good points while shooting on the move, if you still use the principles of prepping the trigger, getting low, things like that. So that's just kind of something that I've learned and just kind of applied over time. It wasn't a real big aha moment with that type of with like shooting on the move, but it saves a lot of time, and I think the more you get comfortable with it, it's just something you can throw in your toolkit and you can apply. And I think that's kind of what I like to think about when I'm going to a stage is I have all these different skills and techniques in my toolkit, and now I just need to apply them and choreograph them to the stage. So it helps a ton, and I improved upon that a lot after IPSC Nationals, and I realized that was something I need to focus on.
Absolutely. Yeah, the last time me and Heidi went to nationals together, uh, one of the last things we did on the range was shooting while moving from 28
Mhm.
to 25 yards.
Yeah, difficult.
And when you get to the match and you see a 12-yard open target, you can
Hmm.
take that at a gallop because you've been
Oh
practicing at
yeah,
28 yards.
it's the confidence that you probably experienced, and you're
Oh,
like,
it's
all right, this is
amazing.
easy.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is amazing.
so cool. All right, so would it be fair to say that you spend most of your practice time shooting while moving, or do you divide that up consciously?
Yeah, I do divide that up consciously. I think the biggest thing I practice at my practices are like the target scaling drills, and
Okay,
then when I practice movement, I just do box to box. But I actually don't use boxes. I just use like this little line on the ground because I don't
right.
have boxes. But I think that's better because it really confine you as much. But I like to just practice my movement by doing box to box, and then if I get my box to box technique down from all like going forward, backwards, left, and right, then I can apply that on the stage. So I like to split it up. I don't try to like do too many things at once. I like to isolate things. I think you've talked a little about that in the past about like isolating things, and that's how you make the improvements. So I'll do my own shooting on the move drills. I won't try to combine that all at once.
I gotcha. Yeah,
Hmm.
I've been telling people. I kind of want to start this new trend. I want to see a bunch of people dry firing on treadmills. I have this crazy. I actually tried it in a client's house. We were talking about it on the way to his house, and I get to his basement, and there's a treadmill. I'm like, this is it. We can try it. And it was actually
Yeah,
very
we're doing it.
difficult. You know, going
Yeah.
forward was pretty easy, but
Hmm.
once I turned to the side, it was like one of those comedy videos where the guy gets on the treadmill and gets shot across the room. You know, well, that
Yeah,
was
yeah,
almost
yeah,
me.
yeah.
I'm gonna
Jeez.
going to explore that a little bit further. Do you have a formal mental strategy or mental process that you employ when you go to matches?
Yeah, I think so like I think the big thing is like the stage planning. That's like the big mental thing I'm thinking about during the stage. But there's at most matches there's like a lot of drama going on and like a lot of like competition. But I really try to stay out of that and just like stay true to myself and kind of what I'm doing, and I really just focus on myself. And I've done that consistently and haven't faltered from that. And I think that's one of the things that I like to think that I'm pretty good at, is just focusing on my own self and my own match performance, not getting involved in any drama or anything like that. But as far as going to the match, I think what I like to do is I like to train hard stuff, train things that scare me, and then when I come to the match, mentally just or physically just being the most humble person on the range, being the nicest guy on the range, but in my head being really confident in my abilities, and that's not being cocky or anything like that. It's just being confident in your training, and it's not being cocky over like your other competitors. It's being confident in your own ability. That's all it comes down to, is being confident in your own abilities and knowing that what you can do on these stages. So that's kind of my philosophy when it comes to approaching the match, just being confident in my abilities, but being very humble and the nicest guy on the range. And so I think my demeanor might be a little different than most people on the range. I'm always like jokey around, having a really good time, and then when it's time to shoot and get the work done, that's what I like to do.
Interesting. I call that inward cocky versus outward cocky.
Yeah.
You can be as cocky as you want on the inside,
Hmm.
and some
Hmm.
personality types benefit from taking that cockiness and projecting it.
Yeah,
Um,
not me.
okay, okay, good, because when a guy is outwardly cocky like that and makes
Hmm.
a significant error, people
Hmm.
love to see that error. When the
Oh, they
guy
love to
who's,
see it.
yeah, that's like, yeah, there he goes, not so cocky now, are you, big guy?
Yeah, like Conor McGregor, as much as like I think he's super funny, but people love to see him fail just because he's so outspoken and so cocky on the outside, and I think that's to the like really extreme. But I definitely agree with that statement.
And you also talk about being the nicest guy on the range. I tell people,
Hmm. Hmm.
be so nice to your ROs.
Hmm.
You want the ROs to love to see you come and not dread your arrival, because
Yeah.
if there's any question whatsoever, the benefit's
Hmm.
going to go to the nice guy and not the a-hole. And that's another
That
great
is
reason
true.
to be the nice guy on the range. I'm not suggesting that they'll make an inappropriate call, but if there's
Yeah,
anything
definitely.
questionable and you're the
Hmm.
nicest guy on the range, you might get the benefit of the doubt versus the guy that's been arguing with them
Yeah.
all day long.
Yeah, I totally agree, and especially the Argos, they spend so much time out there and in the heat and 3 4 days of competition. So respecting them is a big thing, and being nice to them is good too. Unfortunately, I have seen people get away with stuff by being too nice to the ROs, but just being nice to them in general and being like pretty true to yourself and pretty honest with the scoring and making sure that it's right is pretty important as well.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, your reputation's all you've got, so you might as well take care of that
Hmm.
reputation. All right.
Yeah.
But no, but you don't have any kind of a formal like mental mindset that you take to the match. You just work your stages and just work that process and let that be the backbone for
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, I think the backbone for everything is that, and then also your preparation. But as far as like match day comes, like I'm probably the most excited guy in match day. Like kind of like a kid in a candy shop, but like just a kid on the range, basically. I'll wake up and like spring out of bed. It's the only time I ever get excited to wake up at like 6 a.m. So I'm pretty excited that come match day and run on every single day. I like to get there early. I like to take my warm shower, then my cold shower. I got my whole kind of recipe together and
Now wait
get
a
there
second.
early. Like
Hang
what I
on.
eat.
Hang on. Hang on. Hang on. I got to stop you right there. Warm shower and
Yeah,
cold shower. Is this the key to winning
yeah.
every match in the country?
No, no. I think everything comes down to recipe. I think like my guns a recipe. They run the same thing every single time. I think
Yep.
running the stages and fundamentals is a recipe basically. But I like to stay pretty consistent with what I do. I get out of bed. I like to like take a warm shower, then a cold shower. Really get pretty pumped up for the day. But I don't know. It just kind of wakes me up. I mean, but I like to run the same recipe and formula every single time. Eat the same stuff. I'm not really superstitious about things like that. I think some people like get paralyzed with their superstitions and things like that. But I just like to keep it pretty consistent.
All right. And how do you handle anxiety or pressure as the match unfolds?
Yeah, so I think that's one of the big things that baseball has helped me a ton with, especially with pitching, because there can be a lot of tough situations. I've been thrown into some pretty nasty situations, some bases loaded, 2 outs, like championship game type things. So I've had a lot of experience like dealing with pressure, but I think just like silencing the noise around you is really important and everything that's going on around you. Because if I walk to the line and I have this like eyes on the back of my head and I'm thinking about everything that's going on behind me and thinking about what people are thinking about me, I think that's not a really good way to shoot or live. And so I'm just focusing on what you're doing is the most important thing. And so I like to apply that when I'm shooting my stages and things like that.
There probably isn't a pressure in shooting that would equal bases loaded, 2 outs as a pitcher. That sounds like a pretty significant amount of stress because the whole thing's riding on what you do next, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like Nationals was a really good test of that. I think people were just like waiting for me to kind of crumble under the pressure. I mean, like at one point I had like a 40-point lead on the last day. I lost some of that ground with a couple of different mistakes, but I think the most pressure that I've ever felt in my entire life on a stage was the last stage of Area 8. It was my first time shooting against JJ Rakaza in an entire year. I was down 15 points, and I just had to, kind of clutch it up. Get that clutch gene going through my veins and just shoot and call it good. But I think the last 2 stages of Nationals was pretty intense, pretty stressful. Had a lot of anxiety just because I wanted to finish. I wanted to get this match over with. I wanted to get this thing in the books. I wanted to get that trophy already. But I really need to focus on the individual things I need to do to be successful. I think a lot of that anxiety and fear, man, I'm not really like an anxious person. That's kind of not who I am. But getting rid of that, I think, comes through preparation and confidence. And so it's hard when you're at the match. You're like, geez, I wish I would shot weekend, 500 rounds more, something like that. But I think if you're scared or nervous, getting a more level of detail on the stage might help a little bit. I think that helped my last 2 stages was really thinking about what I'm going to see and how I'm going to pull the trigger and things like that. And that kind of just like had my mind distracted from the hundreds of people on practice score refreshing and watching and people on Facebook and stuff. So it was pretty cool. After the match was over, after I shot that last stage, I finally turned my phone off of airplane mode, and there was hundreds of messages of support and stuff. So I don't like that during the match. So
Right.
you can message me and everything, but I won't read it. So yeah.
And it sounds like baseball prepared you very, very well mentally. What I think I'm hearing is that you, instead of even acknowledging the anxiety, it sounds like you just return to your process, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay, because most
I think
people,
that's big.
yeah, most people suffer from anxiety when the outcome is not known, and I
Yeah,
think we can help that a bunch by predetermining the process. We can't control the outcome, but we can for sure control our
yep,
process, and that
absolutely. I
calms
love
most
that.
people down really, really well. Um,
Yeah.
so I think you just covered my next question. The super squad typically knows as a group exactly where they're at going into every stage, don't they?
Yeah, they do, and I think some people like to like not know or like sort of know or like try to like manipulate that a little bit. But I think most people know exactly where they're at all times. As much as people are like, oh, I don't know where I'm at, but you know that every person in that squad, or at least the top 5, will know exactly where they're at and kind of will know.
Oh, I
I think
lost you
we
there for a
reset
minute.
a little bit.
I lost you
Oh
there for a
yeah.
minute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, yeah. So basically, I think the top 5 always know where they're at. A lot of people think like to talk about, oh, I don't really know or I don't want to know, but everyone knows, have a good mental picture of where you're at, and I think that's really important because you know when to push and like when you're getting down to the last stages, kind of where you need to push. And like I was up 25 points going into the last stage, and so JJ knew that he had to hit a home run, and I had to basically tank the stage, and so I knew in my position where I had to be, and I shot actually behind JJ every single stage, and so that was quite the honor to get to shoot with him and Casey and people like that. But it was pretty cool shooting behind him because, especially the last stage, because he ran a totally different stage plan. He's like doubling the activator and shooting it all from one side and like kicking out and doing this one thing. So he had to really push at that point. And like they're all like trying to like 5 guys all scheming with JJ of like, oh, we're gonna shoot it like this. This is how you're gonna win. Like this is how you're gonna do it. And so at that point, knowing where I was in the match, that's important for me because if I was down or something like that, I would have wanted to know where I can push.
I
And he knew
see.
exactly where he was, and he knew we needed to push there. Where I knew that I was up 25 points, 60 point course of fire, so I need like an 80 or something on it. So at that point, I just had to see this hard dot focus, be really focused on my sights, really focused on getting the good hits. So it's really important to know where you're at. But I think in the first day or two, it's not that important. It's just coming down to the home stretch.
Right. There's a lot of people on the super squad. Oh, and by the way,
Mm-hmm.
you may not
Mm-hmm.
know this, but before practice score, there was usually
Mm-hmm.
some person on the super squad doing all that by hand, so that they
Yeah,
would
that'd be
know.
kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I wish there was a little like a leaderboard we'd carry around or something like that. I think the old ways of Seal Challenge and Pyro have kind of come and gone, but I think that's a pretty cool history that I like. And I think part of that is the scoreboard that they bring around. So I
Yeah.
think that'd be kind of cool to bring back.
Outstanding. So just so I have a clear answer to that question,
Mhm.
you do know where you're at, whether you really want to or not. You are aware of where you're
Yeah,
at on every stage.
yeah. A couple times it's kind of hindered me. I was on par to break 80 seconds at the last Steel Challenge, something that only 3 people have done, and I think I like had in my mind that I need to rush and I need to like go fast. And I think that's when that's a younger Christian, that's a younger shooter, and so I wasn't as mature to like handle that information back then. But now I can be pretty confident to like handle the information, like know where I'm at, and I kind of like to know where I'm at. But at the end of the day, I go back and forth on this a lot. But I think at the end of the day, knowing where you're at is really not going to change anything and how you perform. The only time you really need to know is if you need to like push or something like that. But that also runs into a flaw of like you're shooting and you're not seeing what you need to see, and then that just tanks your scores. And so at the end of the day, I don't think it really changes much. If you want to know or don't know, I don't think it really matters too much. But I think most of the time, I just kind of like to have a good sense of where I'm at, where I'm standing.
Hmm, that's cool. Yeah, because again, that kind of goes back to calculating and or knowing the hit factor. If you're seeing what you
Yeah.
can see and you're performing
Hmm.
as quickly as you can, what would you change based on that information?
Exactly.
But
Yeah. Very true.
but if you know you're trailing by a
Mhm.
margin you think you can get, maybe you do want to swing for the
Absolutely.
fence because a lot of these guys they don't care
Absolutely.
whether they're second or sixth. If they ain't going to be
Yep.
first, they don't care. So
Yeah, that's exactly I find that like so wildly true. Everyone's going after first place.
right.
I think like the second to last stage was just like is that target where there's like a line of targets, then you go prone. And Casey's like, "Yep, I'm swinging for the fences on this one," and so that's what he did, and wasn't able to connect. And so then he knew he was kind of out of the races at that point. But everyone has their kind of last hurrah going for first place, and that's the prize. I mean, if you're not first, you're last, and so that's what's been so frustrating losing matches. It's just something you really got to focus on the top.
Hmm. And baseball probably also made you really competitive too, right? Do you have a pretty serious competitive
Yeah,
streak?
yeah, I'm very competitive, and I'm very very nice to my competitors and respect all my competitors. But at the end of the day, I'm very competitive, and I'm there to win. I'm not there for second place. And I think that like a statement like that is giving me goosebumps. Because I'm one of the people I look up to is Max Michelle, and I remember I watched Hot Shots like a million times, and one of the things he was talking about is like I don't fly down here, I don't spend all this time away from my family, training and everything for second place. They go there for first place. So that's always the goal.
Yeah, that's very very cool. That's I think that's one of the things that hurt me a little bit is I was raised by Christian music teachers,
Hmm.
uh, and it was very kumbaya, be the best you can be.
Hmm.
And if you
Yeah.
beat somebody, you're almost supposed to apologize to them for hurting your feelings. And for me, it was
Yeah.
always about how good can I be. And I think that
Mhm.
lack of participation in organized sports might have hurt me more than I realized. That's fascinating stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. I think one of the biggest things though is when you do win, it's like how you win basically. And I think the biggest thing is like winning fairly, winning without cheating,
oh
and winning
yeah,
like staying true to your morals. And then especially when you win, being respectful to your opponents because as much as like I had a very successful season, I had multiple like I didn't win IPSC nationals this year. I lost. You see both sides of the blade there of winning and losing, and so I've had a lot of good experiences losing, and I've had a lot of negative experiences losing. So it's kind of like how the winner treats you. I think is really important. So that's one of the things I like to really take to all the matches that I win is really be respectful of your opponents and things like that.
yeah. And one neat thing about losing is when I was shooting actively, I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't get beat locally very much.
Mm-hmm.
But when I
Yeah.
did, I loved it because it showed me
Yep.
what I needed to work on. I either made an error,
Yeah.
there was some
Mm-hmm.
sort of flaw in my game, or I made a big mental error that I could learn a bunch from. Because if you're dominating locally and it becomes
Mm-hmm.
easy for you, you don't learn a whole lot when that's happening,
Yeah,
But
absolutely. You need to get beat, basically. And
yeah,
I think that's one of the questions we're probably talking about today about like when you have gotten beaten. But since we're on, I'll probably talk about it a little bit. I lost IPSC nationals this year, and everyone has thought of this as like the perfect season. And I'm pretty happy with my results this year with the areas and nationals. But I think that was the biggest change I've ever had in my shooting because some people like after IPSC nationals were very like hesitant of like, oh, he's not going to win nationals, like this is like, oh, he won't be good on the international scale. I don't think that those haters and that negativity has driven me to be a better shooter. I attribute a lot of my success this year to that match because I have not looked at more match footage or a specific video in my entire life than IPC Nationals. I've looked at those videos more than anything, just because I know there's so much improvement there and so much technique improvement. And so after that, that's when I really started to go back to focusing on the fundamentals and then focusing on shooting on the move and things like that. And so my training really kicked into high gear after that, and I got a lot more serious because it sucks to lose, and I hate that feeling. And so I do everything in my power not to feel that way. So I think that was the big change that year, and I don't think a lot of people know about that.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that a bunch.
Mhm.
Speaking of errors, what mistakes do you see other shooters make that just drive you nuts? That you just wish they'd
I think
stop doing?
Yeah, I think shooting on move, standing up, very frustrating. Just because I know how many times I've told people to do that, especially some guys I shoot with locally, will like literally stand up while they're shooting on the move. That's a big thing, and then also pulling the trigger. You see a lot of like in local matches with like one piece of steel, and those like shoot like 20 rounds at it. I'm like, all right, so each split there was at least like a 30. So the
Mm-hmm.
5 shots you just shot were like 1 second, 1.5 seconds, where you could have taken zero point 0.3 seconds and prep the trigger. I don't think a lot of people know that. I think it's lack of training and knowledge, and so it's not really their fault. But I think I saw a meme the other day of like spending $4,000 seeing that you're going to improve that much by buying like a new gun versus like spending $4,000 in training and ammunition. So I mean, it's a lot of just like getting the information. I think that's pretty valuable, like getting the right instruction through training. But so I don't really blame them for it, but not prepping the trigger is pretty frustrating when you see it because it's a pretty I wouldn't say easy fix, but it's an easy concept to
Yeah,
fix.
and the two that drive me nuts are double tapping
Oh yeah, that's so frustrating.
and point shooting. Drive me up the wall. Do
Yeah, the
you?
double might more. Yeah.
Well, and I just don't think that anybody that dry fires at all ever needs to point shoot a dot gun. I just
Mhm.
don't think they need to.
Definitely not. I see the dot in every single target.
Yeah, and if when you've dry fired and when you've handled that gun, it doesn't take you any longer to see that dot than it does to throw the gun up and just pull the trigger. So, folks,
Like,
there
it's
you have it. In 1 week, we have Brian Enos and Christian Seiler telling you you don't have permission to point shoot a dot gun. Permission denied, right?
We should not, because also I think one of the things, the concepts there is like if you point shoot two targets and you have no idea where those shots went, it is so unbelievably scary, and it slows down the entire rest of your stage because you're still focusing on that. So I think that's a big thing to think about as well.
Fascinating. All right, what advice would you
hmm
give somebody who wants to dominate the sport the way you have this year?
hmm I think it takes a lot of work and a lot of hard work behind the scenes. It definitely takes a good foundation of a support crew and people that really have your back. And so I've been really lucky with my sponsors and my Infinity family, and my direct family. My mom and dad have been very supportive of me. So it definitely starts with that. And everyone just sees like my success, but it really comes down to like the way that my parents raised me, their support, and how they've helped me this year. So that's been really important. And so a support crew is really important. And then putting in the work and like getting better is a lot harder than people think, just because people have a lot of like if, even me with training stuff, and you don't want basic stuff or you don't want to do the hard stuff. And so as soon as you realize that shooting 6 yard or 5 yard build drills isn't going to help you, the better you're going to be. And so not all the training is going to be fun, but you need to understand like what it takes to be successful, and it's that hard work. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just working hard. And anyone can become a good shooter by refining technique and practicing that technique at a higher rate of speed and just making it second nature. I mean, it sounds really easy, but I've had a lot of help along the ways, and it just takes a lot of hard work and a lot of focused energy, because a lot of people just like to shoot and go week by week. We're shooting, we're having fun, but if you really want to get better, you have to analyze your performance, get help when needed. I've had a lot of breakthroughs from like people just saying little things, like BJ Norris with the trigger prep thing in the practice table, or what the warm up area of nationals. And so I think $1,000 class would be worth it if I learned that one thing. I would pay
Mm-hmm.
$1,000 for that skill instantly. And so getting the technique and getting that refined is really important.
So should we tell BJ you're going to send him a check for $1,000 or no? Maybe not.
Probably not. Probably not. I think a lot of times a lot of times I wish I would have taken a class a long time ago, or wish I would have picked more people's brains about it, because I could have saved a lot of ammunition, a lot of time, and a lot of heartbreak at matches by just learning that earlier. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, it's important.
and people don't know what they don't know, and
Yeah, very true.
and that's the most dangerous kind of ignorance there is. If you know you don't know a thing, like if I was to take up welding tomorrow,
Hmm.
I know I don't know anything about welding, right?
Yep.
But if I go out and I don't know my street is frozen, that's going to be much worse than me welding because I had no idea.
Very true. You have no idea that it is. Yeah, you have no idea you're making the mistakes you're making. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that.
All right, let's see. That takes care of my questions. Now let's get into the
Hmm.
readers' questions. You ready for
Sounds
those?
good.
All
Yep.
right. So this one's from a good friend of mine named Jay. And he
Hmm.
says, what drives you? What motivates you? What do you think about in training?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for me isn't just like winning the matches. It's I find a lot of value in like seeing the hard work pay off in the matches. I think that's the coolest thing, and that's one of the things that I saw in Infinity Firearms is they're not trying to just pump out the night like the coolest, fanciest, best fit guns in the world. They're making these guns because they love to do it, and all the employees that I saw there loved and saw the value in seeing like the fruits of their labor. And so I think that's one of the big things for me, just like them. They see the final product and kind of like what they've made in front of them is like really cool and special. I think that's one of like the cool things about like why I train and why I practice is seeing that hard work pay off. And I think that's why a lot of people do a lot of things is because they want to see their hard work pay off. And it's pretty like if I would have just like not trained in practice and just won nationals, just like it wouldn't really mean anything to me. But because of the work that I put in, it meant like a lot more than I think it would have if it was just handed to me.
Absolutely, yeah. Landy Basham
Hmm.
says that we don't appreciate the things that we don't pay for,
Hmm.
and that's true in
Yeah,
competition, and it's also true in life. You know,
absolutely.
you find
Yeah,
some
that's a great quote.
spoiled kid who's driving a new Porsche. He doesn't care if he wrecks it.
Right.
But
Yeah.
if somebody spends a year saving up for that car, they're going to take a lot better care of it than somebody who just gets handed to it.
Yeah.
All
That is
right,
very.
next question comes from another good friend of mine from South Africa named Garrett John. He'd like to know what kind of thought process you have or use at matches. I think we already kind of covered that.
Yeah,
You
we
want to
did cover
revisit that
that. Yeah.
again?
Yeah, it's just the confidence in your training and practice and have that mentality. We talked about that a little bit earlier, and then I think the other aspect of that is stage planning. So that was kind of all covered earlier. But
Okay.
yeah, that basically answered the question.
All right. And we also covered this one. This guy wants to know what's your dry fire practice schedule and what drills do you do? We kind of covered that, but let's just revisit that one
Yeah.
more time.
Yeah, totally. So the dry fire, I like to start slow, then kind of work up the speed. But I take that time to practice my draws, my loads, picking up the dot, unloaded starts, weird start positions. While I'm talking about weird start positions, everyone just likes to practice hands relaxed at sides, but that's one of the things that I changed in my training because I know my draw kind of sucks sometimes. So I practice like the weird start positions, hands on the left, hands right, hands above, wrist above shoulders, things like that. So I practice that type of stuff, and then I like to get pretty zen, I say, with my trigger. So that happens in dry fire, and then when I get on the range, I like to section off different drills and different skills I see lacking. I think one of the big things I changed recently was my reloads on the move. I used to kind of like pause and then run with my reloads, and now I hit my reloads in stride. So like those little like isolation drills I'll do, but I like to do target scaling drills. I like to do box to box movement. Like I'll just set up two player racks and move from box to box. Take one plate, check one plate. So movement goes, I never really run stages unless I have like a Saturday night practice with a bunch of dudes. We'll set up some stages, but mostly I'll run box to box stuff for movement, and I'll take those techniques and apply them to stages. So I'm just isolating the skills and breaking it down from fundamental standpoint is pretty important.
You know, one of the ways you can break Facebook is by posting the question, should I do my reload before I get moving or should I do it at
Mm-hmm.
the end? And
Yeah,
you I just leave them alone because it is possible to
definitely.
reload a gun while you're moving, and standing there not doing anything is just
Yep.
costing you time.
Totally. Yeah. I like to do the you drop the mag, you step, and then you load. Not drop, step, load. Or actually that's exactly what I just said. I'm meaning like it's easier to show in person, but a lot of people like to drop the magazine, load, and then step.
Right.
The big thing that I like to change was drop the mag, step, and then load, and you hit it in stride, and it takes away huge inefficiency. That is all I preach. And teaching like my first like kind of big class, I think I had like 10, 12 guys this weekend was pretty cool because it was pretty cool to show them where they can save time so quickly,
I know.
and I could show them. It's amazing. I've never really had that feeling before. I think I taught the MGM junior camp and some private lessons, but seeing on a big scale, their eyes just like widen and be like, oh my gosh, like I never thought about that. Like look at I saved 2.2 seconds there, and I do that 3 times on a stage and then 10 times in a match. It all adds up. So that was pretty cool.
I know. And it's funny that you mentioned how gratifying that feeling is because people ask me all the time, when am I going to start competing again? That feeling you just described is more
Mm-hmm.
valuable to me than the feeling of winning. And it just
Yeah.
that goes back to my upbringing. But that gratification you get from that light bulb going on and saving somebody, those things you're showing people, that saves
Mm-hmm.
them years of screwing around. You
Oh,
know,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the big thing for me too is like a lot of those guys in the class this weekend like really wanted to get better and like were really enthusiastic about it. So it made my job really easy, and I was like working my hardest to get all the information to them in a short period of time. So that was pretty cool.
that's so cool.
But yeah, I like to train inefficiencies and capitalize on them and isolate them in practice.
Perfect. All right. So here we go. And apparently, I'm an excellent interviewer because we've already covered most of these things. But maybe they're worded a little bit differently. So this guy
Yeah.
has several questions. Did you feel increased pressure as you got closer to winning all the area matches and nationals?
I did feel a little bit of pressure just because, like, I try not to. I really don't go on Facebook that much, just because a lot of people like would post like duty projects or something like that about like, oh, is someone about to like sweep all the areas, and I'm like, people like trying to jinx it and stuff like that, and like say different stuff like that, and that's like a lot of negativity when anyone's like very successful or being or like growing with success. A lot of people try to like shoot you down basically, and so I don't try to like be on social media that much. I kind of do my own thing. But yeah, I did feel some pressure, like winning Area Two, and Area Two I think was like one of the scariest ones. Not because I like I felt the pressure, like I really didn't feel that pressure too much. I mean, like maybe on the flight and things like that, but when I got there, it was kind of just like business as usual. But the big thing like for that match is like I didn't feel as confident and prepared as I wanted to be. So like that was more like scary and concerning than like actually winning the match, which is kind of funny. But no, I did feel some pressure, but like I said, just distract yourself by training and preparing, and it won't be that big of a deal.
Okay. Next question. I think we already covered this. We'll revisit it one more time. What is your
Mhm.
strategy to deal with nerves during high pressure situations in USPSA and baseball?
Yeah, the big thing is just distracting yourself with preparation, and I think that can kind of get misconstrued because you can get like paralyzed with like too many details and things like that. But you can distract yourself pretty easily by getting more prepared, and then maybe you'll feel less anxious about it if you feel more prepared after you do that work. But I think one of the things that baseball helped me with was you're always kind of doing something when you're pitching, but you do have a lot of dwell time to like think about your mistakes. Like if you think about it, you can go up there, strike out on 3 pitches, and then go sit down for an hour and a half before your next at bat. But what you do in that time dictates your success on the next stage or next at bat.
Hmm. That's fascinating. Yeah, my daughter went from being the world's worst
Mm-hmm.
softball hitter
Mm-hmm.
to actually being able to hit the ball pretty much every time. And
It's awesome.
watching her go back to the dugout after she struck out yet again was so hard to watch. But once she started
Oh yeah.
hitting, she became more
Mhm.
likely to hit. Her self image was changing.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
neat.
Definitely. Self image is big.
And you do manipulate the trigger differently depending on target
Mm-hmm.
difficulty. We know that from talking to you. So that's his next
Mm-hmm.
question.
Yep.
What we also learned was that
Mm-hmm.
that you occasionally make that decision ahead of time, which is pretty neat. So you're coming
Mm-hmm.
into a more difficult shot. You're
Mm-hmm.
certainly more aware of your trigger because you've thought about how you're
Mm-hmm.
actually going to press it. Okay.
Correct.
Did you study anyone or any other sports to develop your movement skills? What are a few things to focus on when it comes to movement? I'll put yet another hash mark by the word lower and then let you answer the question.
Yep. Yep. Lower definitely, and then baseball has definitely helped a ton. Like a lot of times, one of the things I focus on, I'm not trying to give away all my secrets, but one of the things that people don't focus on is how you load your legs. And so I think one of the analogies that one of my students actually mentioned to me was if I'm going to go steal a base, am I going to be like standing straight up and then decide to move? Or am I going to be down low on my legs? Because there's an inefficiency created by going up and down and moving. And so that's going to help. And just like kind of tying those into baseball is going to help like explain it. But no real sports really helped me a ton with shooting as far as like planning technique, but the like playing baseball has helped a ton. And then what was the first part of the question was
Did you study anyone or other
okay.
sports? And
Yeah.
I don't know anything about baseball, but it seems to me that when you see somebody in the outfield, they're not standing straight up and down. They've
Yeah.
got their legs pretty wide and they're ready to move in any direction, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so with outfield, one of the big like statistics that people like try to analyze and put numbers on is like your drop step and like how long it takes you to get to full speed. And so if you're an outfielder and the ball's hit directly over your head, you're not going to turn and then go backwards. You're going to step backwards directionally and you'll turn and push backwards at the same time. So like things like that have definitely helped with like thinking about like moving from the front to back. But then as far as like shooting in the match, like shooters that I've like idolized and really watched a lot. I think Max Michel has been like a very prominent figure in the shooting sports and has really dominated open for a long time. So I have a lot of respect for him, and he was an MGM junior camp instructor. That's one of the camps I went to when I was younger, which is a pretty unique experience, and attribute a lot of my like early like hook and shooting to the MGM junior camp. But I really like Max Michel, Casey, JJ. I think there's a lot to learn from each one of those people. I think every one of them's a very unique person and a very unique shooter, and so I like to look to them. And then more recently, I've not discovered Eric Raffel, but I've known about Eric Raffel for a while. I've looked to him for a lot of different things because I think when you look at someone that's doing it right every single time and not making very many mistakes, I think it's Eric Raffel as far as his movement style. And I think his movement style is different than a lot of successful Americans, and that's why I think a lot of us get beaten when we go shoot against him.
What do you think the difference is?
I think the movement technique. I think a lot of people try to move faster, but I think the way that he gets in and out of positions is different and has different technique. And I think it's hard to explain on video. It's way easier to show in person. But if you look at the way that like IPSC is all about planting up and shooting. Like there's some shooting on move, but most of it is planting up and shooting, and you shoot from 3 different positions on a medium course. And so I think the way that he gets in and out is a lot faster than people. I also think his individual skills are a lot more refined. His loads, his draws. He's much more precise than I think a lot of us Americans, I guess. So,
Absolutely, yeah.
It's been pretty cool to watch those videos.
One thing I love to show people is that doing something sooner is a lot easier than doing something faster.
Very true.
And I think that's one of the things Eric is doing is I think he's leaving a little bit sooner than somebody who shoots has to compress their body and then think about moving. If we can make some contribution to leaving, whatever it is, I think, well, I don't think, I know we can wind up with a lower overall time because we're doing things sooner, right? And the sooner you do something, the sooner you get done, the better your time is.
I totally agree.
Now, do baseball players do a lot of movement practice? Like, are there sections of baseball practice where you just do movement drills?
Yeah, actually, up until I think 2 years ago, I've never done anything like that. But I had a really like nitpicking outfield coach last year, and we do a lot of just like dry drills. The way that we step back, and all of our warm ups would be our drop steps, different drills like that. So we do a lot of like footwork movement drills and like ladder drills, and just a lot of different like courses of like cones and things like that. And one of the big things was getting low, being able to explode, things like that. So some of those drills do apply to shooting, and taking some of that training over to it.
Interesting. All right, let's see what we got here next. Covered that one. Okay. Detailed mechanics of his transitions: sequence, eyes, snap, fast, slow to finish, constant speed, trigger prep during transition, etc., etc., etc. So let's talk about transitions.
Yeah, I think this is one of the coolest things I was showing at the Infinity Experience was how I transition. And so I can watch Robert Vogel's video or JJ's video on YouTube all day long, but as soon as you feel the difference, you're not really going to understand it. But basically, the shot goes up. The first shot, that's your first sight picture. Your second sight picture is when the gun returns down. You crack that second shot off, and then when that gun goes off, you don't hardline the gun and bring it straight across. You don't let the gun come back down. While the gun is still in recoil, you bring it to the next target. I think that's really hard to do. I think Steel Challenge shooting has helped me a ton with that, because if you hardline the gun in Steel Challenge, you're going to shoot like twice as slow.
Absolutely. And a big part of that, I think, is shot calling, right? If we're
huge.
unsure of that shot, we're going to be unsure of moving that gun. But if we know for a fact that bullet's going to hit that target acceptably, there is no need to linger on that old sight picture anymore.
Right. Yeah. 3 sight pictures versus 2. A lot slower.
Absolutely. And one of the and it's funny that you talked about bringing the gun over and recoil. One of the neat things for me to do when we're working on transitions in my classes is you go from the gun returning to the old target to actually standing behind them watching the gun recoil as they're bringing it across. So cool to
Pretty
watch.
cool. Yeah, and I'll have them exaggerate it, which is pretty like mind-boggling for some of them, but it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, and I actually was not aware that you were high level steel challenge, and I apologize for that.
Oh, you're totally fine. Yeah.
I kind of live under a rock out here in the country, and I don't I don't really go anywhere
Mm-hmm.
except the airport. Um,
Mm-hmm.
when you're shooting steel challenge, I always tell
Mm-hmm.
people if you want to work on shot calling and transitions, go to a steel challenge match. That's all it
Mm-hmm.
is shot calling and
Oh yeah.
transitions, right?
That's all it is, and yeah, that's all it is shot calling, transitions, and the draw, of course. And that's one
Right.
of the reasons why I'm not planning on going to the Seal Challenge this year, because I've absolutely destroyed my right hand by coming down and hitting my hand so hard on the gun. So
Yeah.
it's like I'm very like inflammatory person. So when I do a lot of repetitions of something, I can get like pretty easy like tendonitis or like inflame my hand. And so slapping the gun there has hurt a lot. And so I'll come back and revisit Seal Challenge. But I do have a love for Seal Challenge. I really like it and the technique and kind of the history of the Steel Challenge. But as of now, I probably won't go back this year. But that's helped a ton, and that's literally all it is. So the cross training has helped me a ton, and I traveled on this like SASP junior team, a local team, and it's a junior competition. So I shot that for a while, and I think that's helped a ton and a lot of 22 practice.
And was it hard for you to condition yourself to call the shot better and not listen for the ding? Was that challenging for you?
Yeah, that was very challenging, especially as a young shooter. But as I matured, this kind of fell into place.
Outstanding. That covers that. We're almost done here, bud. We're doing good. Thank you very much.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'm looking at my AirPod battery and it's getting low.
All right,
So
we're almost done.
hopefully it makes it.
We're almost done. Give me like 5 more
No,
minutes.
I'm loving this. Yeah, you're totally good.
All right. Most of these we've already covered. Do
Yeah.
you have a ritual or process that you run at the make ready command?
Yeah, I think this is also a difference that I like to do. So I'll draw the gun out. I'll rack it immediately. Well, actually, I won't rack it immediately because I'm not doing that because I'm doing IPSC training. I take that back. But I take the gun out. I like to dry fire the gun immediately, but I'm kind of like breaking that habit because I'm transitioning towards IPSC. But
Right.
I take the gun out. I like to get my dot situated first. And then I will run through the stage plan by just holding the empty gun in my hand. I'll run through the stage plan. I'm just looking at sight picture and maybe a little bit of trigger prep at that point. And then I load the gun. I'll do it one more time and then holster it. So sometimes, I mean, I have a pretty fast open make ready. Like for open division, a lot of people take like a minute. It's like probably about 30 seconds. And some people like will give people a lot of grief for that. But if I run the stage in 10 seconds, your single stack shooter is going to shoot it in 40. I'll save the time in my make ready doing it. So there's really no worry there.
I always find it fascinating because I always took a bunch of grief for a longer than normal make ready. And
Yeah.
I feel like they never made the connection between the guy that you're hassling for a make ready process that you think is too long
Yeah.
is the guy that beats you every single weekend. You,
Very
you,
true.
you may want to think about why he's doing that and not just assume he's there to waste your time. There might be a reason for it.
Yep. I agree. Yeah, totally.
All right. What has been your favorite experience at a match besides winning virtually everything?
I think the people have really made the matches differently. And I feel like it's a pretty cliche thing to say, but I think the people that I've shot with and the experiences that I've made have been pretty important. And then also just like spending a lot of time with my dad and mom on these trips has been pretty special. And so that's like one of the big things I really love about the matches is spending time with them, my family, my friends. And so that's been pretty cool. I think about like individual experiences that have been really cool, but the people that I've met, like at Area 2, I got to meet a lot of the guys from Dillon Precision, do some filming with them, and go see their factories, and pretty cool. And then one of my most recent favorite experiences was the Infinity experience and getting to go around there. And so it's just kind of the people and experiences that make it worthwhile, not necessarily just the win.
Outstanding. What skill was the most challenging to learn?
Yeah, prepping the trigger has definitely been the most challenging to learn. And a lot of people like to talk about throttle control. That's like the second thing I want to talk about, throttle control, but it's really just trigger control. And that goes back to prepping the trigger. And that's been the hardest thing for me.
Okay, outstanding. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? You told me on Messenger that you plan to dabble in shooting as long as it's fun. Is that still your plan?
Yeah.
Is just to
Yeah.
Christian Seiler's just going to dabble as long as he's having a good time.
No, yeah. I mean, I love the industry, but I'm gonna get it. I'm in the pursuit of my degree right now. So my plan is get a business degree. Maybe I'm doing finance, something like that. So I'll have a real job during the day and then shoot after work. And 5 years from now, I hope to call myself an IPSC world champion. I hope that will change pretty shortly. That's my big goal. That's the number one goal. I have a lot of sub goals towards that, but IPSC world champion is going to have my total sight set on. So that's the goal right now. But I don't really see myself as a pro shooter the next couple of years. I'm in the pursuit of my degree. I'm a college student, not a pro shooter, and I just shoot because I love it and it's fun, and I'm not really trying to make a job out of it. I love where I'm at right now. I love shooting for Infinity, and I love doing what I'm doing. So I'm gonna get a real job, and this is my fun hobby thing. So
has your life changed a bunch since you won all those matches?
Not really. People really like to think that, but I mean, no, more people follow me on Instagram and know who I am at shooting matches. But I'm the same old kid from Seattle, and I like the same things, and just go to school every day, work hard, play hard on the range, and nothing has really changed that much. I mean, besides winning matches and things like that, pretty much the same guy, and just love to shoot.
Outstanding. All right. Have you suffered any goal depression? I'm going to answer this for you. I don't think you have, because you have your next goal ready to go, right?
Yep, I already have it set up, and so I'm ready to go.
And do you know anything about goal depression? You ever heard that term before?
Not really. No, I think you probably know a little bit about it. What it seems like.
Oh, absolutely, I do. So goal depression occurs when you literally devote your entire life. Like for me, it was making Grandmaster. I was a failed musician. My band got really close to being successful. That didn't happen. So when I came into shooting, it was very important for me to be great at something. And 9 months after I got an open gun, I got my GM card. And after I did my happy dance in the kitchen, I felt like I had nothing to live for because I didn't have another goal ready to go. You're not going to have that problem because you've got another goal ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, yeah, that's what that means then. Well,
yeah,
cool.
so basically just imagine that you want to learn to fly an airplane, right? And you spend every waking moment studying airplanes and studying flying, and then you get your pilot's license. Well, now you have nothing to live for. It's crazy,
right?
But when you achieve a major goal like that, it's super important to have another one ready to go. All right, we got a couple more. Will you be naming any of your children Moon? Because that would look sick in a phone book.
Moon Siler?
Moon Sailor or Moon Siler?
No, I don't think so. I don't really get that.
So he's not going to do that.
So.
Never mind. Okay, perfect. We got that one covered. That was the most important one we had, buddy. So now we're good.
Yeah, we're all through it.
Okay, one more. We have covered... Buddy, we've covered everything. We're good to go. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's all. But if you want to stay in touch with kind of what I'm doing, and I like to post a lot of help and advice on my Instagram page, christian.siler.shooting. And it's been a great podcast. Thanks for having me on.
All right, well, let's go ahead and thank our sponsors. I'll let you go first. Go ahead and thank your sponsors for their support.
Yeah, I want to thank all my sponsors for my support. Infinity Firearms, first and foremost, Dillon Precision, Everglades Ammunition, Double Alpha, and Starline Brass.
All right, mine are Targets USA, makers of the finest targets on the planet. I'm a CR Speed guy because I'm old. You know, CR Speed has been kinder to me for longer than I deserve. Have you got to play with the new AMG Lab Commander timer yet?
I have not yet, nope.
Oh, it's super, super cool. Hunter's HD Gold Glasses, Outdoor Dynamics, makers of the finest remanufactured ammunition I'm aware of, and Shooting Sports Innovations. Christian, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
And we wish you nothing but success. Have a great day, young man.